Okay. All right, folks. Yeah, sorry about the delay. You know, it just the machines, right? Okay. So before we get on the subject, I want to welcome everybody in the on the topic. I want to welcome everybody in the live chat. We have Mick Connolly, we have Americana, Johnny Sides here, Billy W, Malia, of course, Wes H, Neva Moore or Nevermore. Is that it? D. Dorothy Papineau, our good friend, and Kenneth Johnston, Oregon music fan. Let me go through the list here. Marcos Toledo. And Rusty Spoon. Nick N. Nick, let me tell you, you're going to like what I'm talking about tonight. You should know by now what my sources are. Um, and that one model, the Acronoplane, that actually, from my quick research I did, it looks like it flew, of course, back in 1937. There, of course, is Mike of Night. And I think that's everyone. Oh, Mike Does is here. So, welcome everybody in the live chat. I'm sure others will show up. And before I get started on the topic, I want to tell all of you if you want to get a Walter Bosley book, books written by me, you have to go to walterbosley.com because we've set the prices the lowest at walterbosley.com. Wherever you can find the Walter Bosley books, look, Lulu still prints them and distributes them. Okay. And some of the books you can find now on Amazon. But I'm telling you, do not buy my books on Amazon. Okay. I just do that to be able to take advantage of the distribution things. But let me tell you something. Amazon takes the royalty. Amazon takes the creator's royalty. All right. They give us pennies on the dollar just because they're Amazon. Please don't buy my books at Amazon. Okay. Let Jeff Bezos use his own money to build his penis rockets. All right. Don't let him use my royalties. Thank you. And Lulu, you could go to Lulu Direct, of course, but you're going to pay more dollars per book than you will at walterbosley.com. So Malia really worked hard earlier this week and really opened up the store at walterbosley.com/shop. Okay. And we slashed the prices. I'm sure you guys have known how expensive my books have been. They're not anymore. Go take a look. If there's been any Walter Bosley book that you've been wanting, but it was just too expensive, go take a look again because it's not, those prices have been slashed. I think Malia can tell you my most expensive book, paperback, was Empire of the Wheel 1 at $40. It's not $40 anymore. It's quite a bit less expensive than that. But you got to go to walterbosley.com. Okay? Please. That's where you go because that's where I get to keep the biggest part of my royalty. Okay? So please, if you're interested in helping me be able to do what I do and you want to contribute in some way and you want to read my books, get them at walterbosley.com/shop. That's going to be the cheapest place you can find the books new. Okay. So I'll mention that again before the show is over. Trust me. Now, so here we are talking about mysterious bell jars. I have to tell you something. I did not know that this was a thing until after the unboxing video I did the other day. That treasure trove sent to me by our friend Nick N, who's here tonight in the live chat. And looking through everything, glancing through, the books, I found these two books in there, of course. And in Nick's letter, which I read more thoroughly since the unboxing, he sent these to me specifically for this phenomenon of these mysterious bell jars. Now, we're going to get into what I mean by that. But as I was looking into this and reading the material in these two hard to get books that Nick sent to me, I realized, my gosh, this phenomenon really is nearly identical to my UFO sighting in 2014. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today too. So I am duly intrigued. Thank you, Nick, for turning me on to this bell jar phenomenon, because this is, from my perspective, this is big. And you're going to see what it leads into here as we get going. So the bell jar phenomenon. Now, this has to do with UFO sightings in some cases, okay? But more specifically, it is this weird phenomenon where I'm assuming you all know what a bell jar is. Bell jars are used decoratively as a casing, a glass case, to keep valuables in, delicate valuables like handmade dolls or some type of crafted artwork, or even relics. Holy relics very often are kept, and the idea is that it keeps it safe, from the air and dust and things like that. Now, in a laboratory setting, a bell jar is something that is sealed so that they can create a vacuum inside the glass. And it's shaped, it's round at the top and then kind of goes down long. If you look at the graphic for this episode, you'll see that one of the images is an illustration of a classic bell jar. Excuse me just a second. I have to get the seat cushion. Okay. There we go. It still might be noisy, but I think everybody will survive. So once you see the shape of what I'm talking about, or, Google bell jar or whatever, and you'll see. Once you see the shape that I'm talking about, you'll understand what I mean by the bell jar phenomenon. Very often what's reported is this dim light, usually blue. Think about that. Usually blue. And within this is some type of object, sometimes a figure, like a living figure, like a person. Okay. And as I read more about it, I had this kind of fascinating revelation about these things. Before I get to that, let me share with you the information about the bell jar phenomenon. And maybe some of you have heard of it. I just never had. Now, in this book that our friend Nick sent, I'm guessing this guy's name is John Major, but spelled with a G, or Magor or whatever. This is Aliens Above Always. And the very back of the book is a good intro to what we're talking about. It asks the question, is the blue object at bottom left a coffee pot at a riverside picnic site? It might seem so, but when it is measured against the background shown here, the object is over 5 feet tall and stands under a misty canopy twice that height. However, the photographer of this extraordinary scene did not notice this object, nor the little figures at right, and it claims that there's these little humanoid figures at the right. Clearly seen without a camera at other times, the so-called bell jar, and he has it in quotes here, apparently is a device of major importance for the so-called, he puts this in quotes, aliens above. I don't think this is an extraterrestrial thing. Interdimensional, yes. So in this book, it's presented and discussed. So let's go to, let me read a little bit about this for you. Let's get to, okay, this is just the marker that the chapter starts, but I want to get right to the bell jar point, so to speak. Here we are. Oh, now, the photograph that the back of the book was describing, there it is right there. Now look down towards the left corner, and you'll see the little blue object, okay? Little blue object. Now, that is actually inside the bell jar phenomenon. I'm going to put this a little closer. Now, look at the glowing blue object, and you'll notice that it seems to be surrounded by a force field kind of thing, and that force field is in the shape of a bell jar, and that's the phenomenon. Now, here's what's interesting. You see this river here? That's in Montana. That was the other thing that surprised me. This is a Montana story. So let me read this. As with several other subjects under study here, the matter of the bell jar found its way into Canadian UFO Research Q4's pages because there was someone out there with an eye for the unusual and the initiative to tell us something about it. Our contact in this case was with an observant contributor, Mrs. Betty Jones of Kalispell, Montana, who sent in a snapshot of a mountain stream running past a square-cut rock on which stood a bright blue light. Anyone less alert than Betty might have dismissed the object as a shiny blue coffee percolator that campers had left behind. But when artist Brian James began making a sketch from the photo, he calculated by careful measurements that the misty canopy framing the so-called percolator was 6 feet in diameter and 11 feet tall. Now, okay, we're talking about something clearly that a human being of, average height, size, could be encased within. And I found that to be really intriguing, particularly the fact that it does look like kind of, you've seen the movies, the Predator films, right? And you see when the Predator turns on his cloaking device, how that you can tell he's there by the way he distorts the background. Well, that's what's going on. And inside, the artist has done a rendering of this photograph that I showed you. Well, sorry about that. Now, see the in the lower left corner there, in this artistic rendering, okay, you can better see what's in the photo. Right there. See? Now that's what's in the photo there. See? Gives you a better idea. Now I know that people tend to go to aliens all the time because that's the thing that's been shoved into everybody's faces for decades, that this is all having to do with aliens. And there are those people that if you say otherwise, they get their panties in a bunch. Here is a cover of Flying Saucer Review from summer 1968 that shows another artistic rendering of this idea. Okay, if you had a hard time seeing what I was showing before, there you go. Now look at that shape, and there's always some object within that's making the interior very bright. And you see kind of the rendering shows kind of the glow. Now that cartoon rendering is based on witness descriptions of this bell jar phenomenon. Let me read to you a description of a sighting. Now, yes, these are seen in the sky, okay? Of course, it is technically, it's a UFO, but I'm just saying that I don't think it's extraterrestrials. Okay. Thanks to the good memory of our two readers, Graham Conway and Mark Herbstreit, we learned that a mystifying bell jar device of similar size was seen 5 years earlier by the minister of a church in England, who reported his experience to the Flying Saucer Review. That's the cover I just showed you. With further thanks to editor Charles Bowen, we received permission to carry appropriate parts of the story, plus reproduction on the front cover of that issue, which showed an object closely similar to that seen in Idaho. There was another Idaho sighting talked about. The bell jars matched each other, even to the point that the large external canopy enclosed a smaller device, what Betty Jones of Kalispell, Montana, had called the energy cell. Remember that, that's important. Of the same size and shape. In the English case, however, the bell jar was described as a dirty yellow and was seen to move, which of course added interest to the sighting. It was a fairly warm evening after a day of continuous rain. Visibility was good with no wind and a clear sky with only 3/8 light cloud. There were no aircraft in the vicinity. Suddenly, without warning, the couple saw, there was a couple, okay, a married couple. The couple saw a glowing object which apparently hovered some 6 feet off the ground at a distance from them of 75 to 100 yards. It seemed to be revolving, remember that, it's important, and to be maintaining a steady position. Okay, remember that too, which it did throughout the sighting. This single dome-shaped object was estimated to be 12 to 15 feet in circumference. That's going to come into play later. It was completely symmetrical. It neither increased nor decreased its size, and its overall shape remained constant. The color of its outer rim was a dirty yellow, but inside the rim it was off-white, and this inner light was subject to irregular variation of size. That also comes into play. The whole thing was transparent again, for the skyline at the crest of a slope beyond its position could be seen through the object. No sound was heard throughout the sighting. Folks, what I just described to you is virtually identical to my UFO experience in 2014. Okay? The UFO I saw was a dome-shaped object, and if you recall, in past reports, particularly my Contact in the Desert presentation, I described it as having like a 15-foot circumference. Okay? Completely symmetrical, neither increased nor decreased its size. Overall shape remained constant. Okay? The inside was brighter, and the inner light, the illumination, whatever that was in there, was subject to irregular variation of size. Now, in the UFO I saw, it was like not a flame, but like a dynamic energy being generated, and it danced like a flame in a way, and it rotated, okay, around the central core. The whole thing was transparent. Remember, I've described for years that you could tell the shape of the UFO not because it was, opaque, it was solid, and you saw the shape. You could tell the shape because the illumination within kind of gave away the boundaries of what was containing it, right? So it was transparent. The UFO I saw was itself transparent. And no sound. Remember, it was completely silent, this thing that I and the other witness saw. Okay? So, wow, as you can see, I tabbed that. When I read that, I was stunned because that described the UFO I saw. Let me see. Let me go to the next. So, I'm thinking, what the heck? How come I haven't heard of this bell jar mystery before? Seriously, I don't recall ever hearing about this until Nick mentioned it and sent these books. So, I'll share another incident with you. April 1974. One witness said it was after 2 a.m. He and his wife woke up, looked outside, and saw a luminous silhouette in an upright position. That's a good way to describe what I saw, a luminous silhouette. The strange night visitor looked like a luminous bell jar about 2 meters high. That matches the dimension again and height the thing I saw. Inside was a column of light brighter than the rest of the form. Exactly. Okay, the inside was brighter than the rest of it, except the slag, that the molten material that started dumping out over the side in the case of what I saw. After about 30 seconds, I went outside to see what it was all about, though my wife begged me not to. Outside, I saw the so-called bell jar slide quietly toward the corner of the house, remaining steadily bright. Now, remember, the one I saw hovered over the fence line between my house and my neighbor's house. Let's see, where did I leave off? The glowing object cast no shadow, although he could see his own shadow in the streetlight. Running to the corner of the house, I could see nothing on the other side, but oddly, I still felt the presence of the energy field. For about 3 minutes, I looked around the trees of the garden for the bell jar, which I had just seen so clearly. Then suddenly, I felt an overpowering urge to return to the house. Okay, when he got back, his wife was in deep sleep, so something made her pass out. So, there's another case of this. I guess these things, were happening. Now let's jump, back to the device. And this, I think, is very interesting. Now, the watchful reader will notice that having introduced our visitor's bell jar device as an apparent incubator of various life forms, because remember what I told you, people are seeing living creatures and beings in humanoids inside this bell jar thing, whatever it is. So let's return to it now and find the place of meetings. Another one is seen in Ohio, not far from Dayton. There are some what appear to be Bigfoot type of creatures that some people report. You know me, I'm not particularly into Bigfoot. I don't really have an animus about Bigfoot. Bigfoot doesn't really interest me. I don't deny the thing, but it just doesn't grab me. I often find that when people say, I saw Bigfoot in that thing, you look closely and it's like, well, this can't be corroborated. It just sounds like, there's some people who are enthusiastic about something and they just want to inject their thing into everything. And sometimes, not in all cases, but sometimes I find the Bigfoot folks do that. Okay. Or maybe people trying to ingratiate themselves with the Bigfoot folks. Now let's go to chapter 3. There's this thing called the Big Wheel. I won't get too far into that right now, but what the author is talking about with this big wheel is that for the longest time, people thought that there was this hooved creature walking, they would see the tracks in the snow or in the countryside or whatever. And the weird thing was all the hoof prints, alleged hoof prints, were in single file. Well, what animal, walks with its feet single file? I mean, straight line. Usually prints are offset. Well, some witnesses came forth with a story that shows that it has nothing to do with animals. What it is some type of weird cogged wheel that rolls across the countryside. And the cogs have these what resemble hooves for the shapes of the cogs, and they leave an imprint as they go. Well, what's interesting is the shapes of the cogs kind of look like the dome of the, like an imprint of the dome shape. But I'm not going to go too far into the cog wheel thing. Let's stick with the bell jar. Now, later on in the book, the author writes, I have on file a case involving the bell jar form in which the witness either entered or saw what we might suppose was another universe or dimension. The report that follows on this remarkable case was contributed by an outstanding ufologist in South America, Irene Granchi of Rio de Janeiro. Then it goes into this case about this gentleman named Antonio and the usual abductee kind of stuff. Let me see if there's any images that you will find interesting. And I've got to read this whole book because this is just really interesting stuff. Again, thank you, Nick. Um, there's another book Nick sent titled Pagans in My Blood. And as you can see, I've got pages marked. Oops. There's a chapter titled Bell Jars. And it goes into someone's reincarnation story, okay, which is interesting within the context. But here's an interesting bit that he refers to as a final bell jar report, I guess, in this book, seemed to be the most significant of all, as it described what may have been this mystifying device in its formative stage. Now, again, this is a book by John Mager or Major, Pagans in My Blood, in which, a story of what looks like reincarnation, the bell jar phenomenon just happens to fall into. I don't think that's an accident. Described as what may have been this mystifying device in its formative stage. This was printed in a Belgian publication, Inforspace, in 1972. The witness observed a greenish blob on an empty street site. Within a period of about 30 seconds, the blob became brighter, seemed to vibrate, then rose and inflated into a goldish bell shape. The luminous bell enlarged and reached about 5 meters in height. Okay, that's 15 feet. Its luminosity became almost blinding and its color paler, almost a neon white. The light, although vibrating, retained the sharp bell shape, its borders being a little like a ray of light, very sharp but not limited to a precise place. Its interior seemed made up of tiny luminous particles swarming all around. Once at its maximum height, the object lit up the whole landscape as far as the trees 100 meters behind the site. It looked like a torch of extraordinary power. The whole thing took place in complete silence, nor did the witness notice any heat or smell. Extremely frightened, the witness saw the bell suddenly falling down or scrunching down flat to resume its original shape. The blob then moved away, exactly following the contours of the ground. Now, that's the last of the bell jar reports that the author has in his records. Here's another interesting bit. As explained in Mysterious Encounters, the significance of the bell jar's history lies in its tie with the philosophy of Buddhism and in the magical effects apparently resulting from that association. So see, folks, this is venturing to what I'm telling you. Interdimensional, yes, I think. Extraterrestrial, classic extraterrestrial, no. There's something infinitely more interesting to me going on here than extraterrestrials. Okay? Extraterrestrials is like, basic. It's not even, strange phenomena or hidden truths 101. It's like kindergarten. Anyway, I know all the ET enthusiasts are going to be, oh, that Bosley, he mocks our precious. Okay. So we have a connection to Buddhism and magic here, which could mean, further extrapolation on interdimensional issues. I'll continue reading. A high priest presented him with a relic of the Buddha in the form of a tiny bone. Rishpan was given the bone as a reward for special services performed in helping to build a shrine. The high priest handed Rishpan the small sacred piece in a cloth wrapping. The account continued. He opened up this piece of cloth and showed me this little piece of bone which looked like a grain of rice, and he said, "Make sure it is kept under the image of the Buddha in a particular way." End quote. Then he explained to me that I should find a fairly heavy wooden board and should then find a glass bell. The author emphasizes, a glass bell? A bell jar, the kind you sometimes see in a laboratory where it is used to create a vacuum, and place this relic, the bone, in the bell jar to make sure it is kept secure so that no one can steal it. I asked, why would anyone steal it? He answered, even if someone offered $1 million for such a relic, they could not obtain one. I was flabbergasted, taken aback. The fact was, here I was being given such an honor and being shown so much respect for the Buddhist by the Buddhist clergy that they would entrust me with a sacred relic of the Buddha. It was priceless. These relics were handed down from father to son through many generations. They were kept in temples and were always the property of the temple until a new temple was built. Normally, they were only taken from whatever reserve they were in and given by one high priest to another high priest whenever they inaugurated a new temple. Here, all they had was a shrine room. I appointed my chief gardener, who was a Buddhist, to proceed with making this particular wooden coffer with the bell jar in the prescribed manner. Then it would be placed under the Buddha's image so that when anyone pays homage to the image, image, they were also worshiping his bones and making various other religious commitments. 2 or 3 times a year, the relics have to be paraded before the people in religious festivals. Okay. We tried several times to screw bell jars onto the wooden board, but the bells always broke. It wasn't until 3 months had passed that we had the right coffer where we could deposit the sacred relic. Where was it held all this time? For the whole period of 3 months, it was held in the company's safe. Only 3 people had the combination. The narrator is one of them. General manager was another. And the third was the accountant. There were keys and a combination of the safe. To open it, you still had to use the 2 keys. The general manager held the keys. If anyone who wanted to get in the safe of the 3 would have to go ask the general manager for the key and do it at the same time. And so therefore it can only be opened when 2 or more of them were present. For the 3 months, nobody went into the safe without a witness. The whole significance of this, after 3 months, when we were ready to deposit the relic in the coffer under the image of the Buddha, we took the brass dagaba or chedi out of the safe, and just to make sure the relic inside was safe, in front of my chief gardener, I proceeded to unfold the cloth which held the relic. Now, nobody had been in that safe to get at that relic in that 3 months. The general manager and everybody, was assured. The general manager was the witness whenever the safe was opened. Anyway, to my amazement, when I opened the cloth, there wasn't a relic. There were 2 relics. Now remember, they put 1 in the safe and all those safeguards, and nobody got to it. And when he opened the cloth where the 1 relic was, there were 2 inside. The other one was like the first one, not the same shape, not bigger, not smaller. It just wasn't exactly the same. They were shocked and amazed. When he asked the chief priest if maybe he had made a mistake and the chief priest had given him 2 relics instead of 1 and told him what happened, the chief priest said, "Oh, don't worry, this happens all the time." He said, "The relics have been known to materialize or dematerialize or travel to other temples or other places of safety." He mentioned one instance in which there were 2 temples in adjoining parishes, and they were within about 2 miles of each other. One temple had 2 relics, the other temple had only 1 relic. There was some animosity that developed between the temples, the reason being that the parishioners felt that at the one with the 2 relics, the priests were not being faithful in their work. They were running little businesses on the side and were being a little bit hypocritical. A year went by. When the elders of the temple inspected the relics, which they did on a yearly basis, the one that had 1 relic was found to have 3 relics, and the one that had 2 relics was found to have nothing. No one would explain it. No one would say why. The feeling was that the relics had dematerialized in one temple and then rematerialized in the other temple, which was more faithful to their beliefs. Now, the author goes on to say that they were surrounded essentially right in their immediate area. There were 3 or 4 temples, okay? And one of their relics could have been transported to another temple. Clearly, I think it was, is the point. Okay, so that goes into a necklace. And let me go back to what I marked here. Okay, now here is an overlay of the artist's rendition of what the bell jar phenomenon. Remember, it's more like a force field kind of thing with an object within. In that Montana photo that's on the back of this book, right? See that? This is a composite of the artist depiction of the bell jar phenomenon over the photograph, so you can see more clearly. See the phenomenon? See how it's dark right there? It's darker. The shape. Okay, that's what, when you look at this and you're looking at it, you can see this. You can see that shape. You can see it there a little bit. It discolors the background. Okay, this is just trying to show you what's going on. And there's objects inside these things, usually, some type of luminescence, but there's a chapter in here that talks about living figures and beings, and what the Christ is. Anyway, sorry, I hit my mouse there and something popped up. So I know this seems like, makes your head spin, because it's like, Walter, what are you talking about? You're reading stuff from this, but I wanted to share with you the things that jumped out at me, because the size, the dimensions, the shape. Now, admittedly, what I and the other witness saw was a dome shape, okay? But a bell jar is dome shaped in the upper portion. But other than, not having the elongated bell jar shape, the particular object referred to as, the bell jar, object, in quotes, really what was being described was just like the UFO that I saw, kind of the dome shape. Now, you'll notice that in the graphic for this episode, there's a photo also of the George W. Van Tassel Integratron. Why did I put that there? Well, I was out doing, the day I saw the UFO, I was out doing some interesting research that subsequently I learned had kind of a Van Tassel Integratron connection. And that night was when the dome-shaped UFO appeared over my house. And when it stayed there, perfectly silent, deadly silent, just no sound at all. When it then moved away from the house where it had been hovering above, it moved in the general cardinal direction that, if it kept going straight, would go to the Integratron. Okay. And when I looked at the Integratron, the next time I was out there, I realized, wait a minute, the dome top, the Integratron, as you can see in the graphic for this episode, the sides are shorter than the height of the dome, but it's got this rim going around the base of the dome roof of the Integratron. The dimensions of that were identical to the dimensions of the UFO, the dome-shaped UFO. And if you take that ridge off and you made the Integratron glass, it could look like a bell jar. So what's going on with this bell jar phenomenon? You know, I don't know about you, but this bit about the temples and the relics transporting between temples, okay, um, that makes me think of Joseph Farrell's work, particularly Grid of the Gods and other books where he talks about the churches and the temples being engineered and equipped to be actually kind of an advanced technology, ancient radio, right? Or radio centuries before we were supposed to have it. It sounds to me like with this transporting of relics from one temple to the other, we have something very similar to what Joseph Farrell talks about in Grid of the Gods, and also just with the very word the bell, you know, you have to wonder, you know, is the remember the description of now remember there's the bell jar object, you know, objects that are bell jar type shape that are described and seen, okay, but then there's the other part of the phenomenon that's talked about where it's kind of a glow, it's kind of like an energy blob, right? And it takes shape. Remember, it starts out as a blob, but then takes shape into this bell jar shape, and there's things described inside of it, right? And then it goes back down to a blob and disappears. So here's what I throw at you. That to me, this weird blob thing where it expands and then takes the form of the bell jar. Think about this. You're in a lab. You have a bell jar shaped device large enough for a human being to stand inside. Okay. It uses the Nazi bell technology. All right. You stand inside this object and it transports you across time and space to other places, other dimensions. What does the person see when you arrive there? They see the blob, they see it stretch and take form into this bell jar shaped glow, blue glow, remember, and you can see the figure inside. Well, what if this is a way to travel through space and time? Okay, where you're actually you get into the actual physical bell jar device. Okay, you're standing inside of it, but then when it manifests a portal, okay, and you're seeing where it projects to, what the people there at the destination you're projecting to, what they're seeing is you inside the energy field. You're actually in a laboratory, you know, possibly. You're either in a laboratory or you've been physically transported to that site within this contained energy blob, so to speak, right? Shell, you know, um, uh, what's the word? Not camouflage, but force field cloaking thing or whatever. But it's the energy. Or you're either transported there directly or they're seeing you looking at them, looking around, but you're actually in the laboratory. It could be either way. So I think what these bell jars might be aren't alien friggin' UFOs, but just what I described. Could it be what the Nazi bell does? Could it be what something T. Townsend Brown had been experimenting with? Are the figures that we're seeing inside, is this from possibly the World War II era or many years back? And, you know, they looked into the future, or is it future looking into the past? Or what if it's our contemporary with us and it's just somebody on the other side of the planet, you know, with this device? But the object is the portal, okay? Something we think is a UFO that people are going to say, oh, this is an extraterrestrial craft. No, it's just the physics of the thing. What the bell jar phenomenon might be is the manifestation of interdimensional, transtemporal, transspatial technology, traveling device. This is what I thought of as, for the first time I learned about this bell jar phenomenon. You can bet I'm going to be having a lengthy conversation with Joseph Farrell about this, and I'm going to be talking about this bell jar phenomenon again, because this just really got my attention and grabbed me. Because again, my UFO that I saw, I'm convinced now, was in the category of these bell jar devices. Thank you, Nick, for sending these books, because I had never had a UFO experience until that night, December of 2014. I think it was the 10th. I have to look on the video because I captured the event on video. And what was odd was, look at the moon in the picture behind me, the crescent moon, sitting perched on my shoulder like Athena's owl, or Hecate's owl, and then look up above my head there. You see the that spinning, I don't know if it's called the Ring Nebula or whatever, but it looks like a wheel. So I just kind of picked this without thinking about that. But there's Hecate and Athena represented in that image behind me. Isn't that interesting? Anyway, all the churchianity people are, oh, he's talking about the devil. No, I'm not. Pull your heads out of your asses, people. Anyway, I digress. So I think that this bell jar phenomenon is providing me with even more insight into what it was I and the other witness saw. Naturally, when we tried to capture it on video, the event is captured. I could share that with you. I think I have in the past. But the funny thing was, a funny thing happened on the way to capturing images of the phenomenon. It wouldn't let me focus. It would not let me focus. It would not let me zoom in effectively. It was weird. I tried. I used the function. All you get is one bright, dancy, dynamic blob of light. But you do see the stuff dumping over the side. So, remember, I thought my UFO was an object associated with the Tuatha Dé Danann, specifically the Cauldron of Dagda. And remember, it was dumping the molten substance over the side. Now, what makes me think this bell jar phenomenon might have something to do with the Tuatha Dé Danann is the fact that the glow is blue, and blue is the color of the Tuatha Dé Danann. It is the primary color associated with them. So again, I thank Nick, because this really, to me, provides me with much more to chew on regarding my UFO experience. And folks, if you feel like I didn't dive into it deep enough, I haven't even begun to cover this phenomenon yet. This is going to be a new thing. For me to dig into, I'm going to dig into this, find out more. We'll be talking about it again. Naturally, when Joseph Farrell is able to come back on, folks, the weather's been terrible where he's at, with tornado warnings and just storms and everything. I think, if you're subscribers to other shows that he's off and on, you'll often appearing on, you'll realize that, okay, unless the host has had the opportunity to record something with him ahead of time, he just hasn't been able to show up on many shows. But when we do get him back on, believe me, we will have already discussed this bell jar phenomenon, and we will address it. And I'll get him to share his thoughts with you, because I think there's something to this that has to do with interdimensional portals. Okay. And I wanted to introduce this tonight and, get the conversation rolling. The mysterious bell jar phenomenon. So, we're almost at an hour, and I think I'm ready to take questions from the live chat. Remember, folks, I'm only going to answer questions on topic, okay? So please be patient, and I thank you to respect that request. I'm only going to answer questions that are on the topic, and only those that are in all capital letters. If you're new here, uh, moderators, everyone, help me out by telling the folks in print down there in the live chat, in case they're not listening to me now, please put all your comments or your questions in all caps so that I know that you're talking to me. A lot of side conversations go on in live chat. I won't know that you're talking to me or asking me a question unless I see it in all caps. If you've asked a question already in the middle of the show, sorry, I don't even look at or consider questions until I say time for questions. You're going to have to ask it again. So that's how we do things around here. If you're new, you'll get used to it. So while I wait for questions, I will tell you that I really love when someone says, hey, have you heard about this? Or, like Nick did in this case. And others of you have also sent me things that, opened my eyes about stuff and helped expand my knowledge of something that I've talked about previously. And these books, thank you, Nick. Again, I've said that like 17 times. So here we have Nick N. himself with a question. The two at a cauldron seems to fit still a cauldron upside down. Is that shape? Okay, an upside down cauldron is that shape. Any thoughts? Yeah, you're right. It does look like an upside down cauldron, but it could also be that the cauldron part you don't see. You just see the glow above the cauldron because the molten substance was flowing out, dumping off what would be the bottom of the object, or the edge perhaps of the cauldron. And remember, people in the old days, as we say, they probably said cauldron when they saw this thing because that was their reference in their own lives. That, something with this roiling, boiling, dynamic, heat and or illumination, and something dumping hot and molten off the side. Well, of course, a cauldron, you boil things in a cauldron, right? It doesn't mean it literally has to be exactly like a cauldron, right? So Philip Blair says, very intriguing. Indeed, Philip, indeed. Kenneth Johnston, Integratron, Mormon Tabernacle, Templar churches, and bell jars. Related, or am I reaching? I'm going to have to look into this even more because I'm not Integratron. I'll have more to talk about. Yeah, to me, the Integratron looks like a wooden rendition of a bell jar. I'm not aware of the Mormon Tabernacle having this kind of shape. If anyone is, please let me know. Templar churches, I'm not aware of them having that shape, but they could be. There could be a relation there. The interior, Beverly Weisenberger asked, did the UFO rotator spin? The interior had some type of dynamic energy that was active, and as it was doing this kind of thing, it was rotating around a central axis. That's another thing that the book talks about, is the bell jar phenomenon, illumination phenomenon within does seem to rotate around a central axis object. So, and that sounds like a Vimana too. So, Mike of Night asked, have you talked about your Bell experience in a previous video? Feels like I missed out on something. If you go to the channel, you will find, Malia can help you out there. I think it's in Essential Perspectives or something. I have a playlist. But you look for it, and my presentation that I gave to Contact in the Desert in 2021 is all about, that particular presentation is all about this UFO experience that I had. And there's imagery and all the details there. So definitely go check that out. Marcos Toledo, are you talking about parallel universes? Well, yes. Well, other dimensions, parallel, whatever, however you want to call it. multiple dimensions. And Malia has, there's the link, there's the URL, copy and paste that. You can see my report on my UFO experience. Thank you, Malia. And while I'm waiting for another question, I want to remind you, particularly if you're new here, if you want to get one of my books written by me, Walter Bosley, go now. As of a few days ago, the place to go is walterbosley.com. Malia has slashed, she and I sat down and we slashed all the prices of my books. My books are significantly less expensive now. If you haven't been able to get my books because they were a bit pricey, they're not anymore. They are well within, I think, the budget of anybody who enjoys these topics and the things I write about, and like to buy my books and enjoy the show here. Go there and look. And folks, you're not going to find them cheaper directly at Lulu anymore. And for God's sake, do not go to Amazon. Let me tell you the truth. Malia has seen it. It shocked her when she saw that Amazon takes all the creator royalty, essentially. Okay? I get pennies. It is pathetic. I get pennies on the dollar. In some cases, I think there's one book, I can't remember which one it was, Malia, but my royalty, if you buy it on Amazon, was 34 cents. FFS, as they say. Okay? Screw you, Jeff Bezos. You're not building your penis rocket on my royalties anymore. Folks, please, the books of mine that you can find there, don't buy them there. Don't even go look for them there. And, even though, you can go Lulu Direct, you're not going to get them cheaper. The least expensive place now with new slash prices to get Walter Bosley books is at walterbosley.com/shop. That's where you should go. And let's see. Good. We have some more questions here. Beverly Weisenberger. Could it be a nuclear drone? I don't think so. I don't think so. Mainly, that's not a bad idea, Beverly, but I don't think so in this case, in the case of mine, especially because of the circumstances and context around it. Nick N asked thoughts on how this may relate to lingam and Indian temple shapes. Good call, right? Right? The thing looks like a lingam. Malia Grimm says, remember to share. It's better for LCL at our store, not Lulu. walterbosley.com/shop. That's where you should go. And folks, I sell the books so that I can keep doing this, doing this research and stuff. The selling the books helps me look into these things. Nick N again. Also, you mentioned Montana piquing your curiosity. Is there a reason for that? If private, no big deal. No. I mean, it got Malia's attention because that was most recently where she lived before here, and but specifically the area. It's Kalispell. It's right up there by Glacier Park, and I've talked about the mysteries of Montana, Glacier Park, and the weird naval technology conspiracy issues. Remember, last year I told you about the weird thing with the red-haired, blue-eyed women that passed out, or something happened to them, and maybe they were roofied, and that could be the case, but they end up pregnant, and they don't know how. And this happens in that zone. I talked about this in the Navy Black Magic video from last summer. But that's just like a weird conspiratorial thing. There are legendarily UFOs reported in Glacier National Park, which Kalispell is just south of by maybe an hour. And that whole area just has some weird stuff. Malia can fill you in on all the weird stuff. So D. Dorothy wants to send me a certified check. Thank you, D. Dorothy. Seriously. Sunflower Toast. Welcome, Sunflower Toast. Bell jars can be used to create a vacuum, as I said, yeah, right, in the laboratory. And experiments have been performed with sound vanishing. Any thoughts? Well, what if the sound in a vacuum gets absorbed into another dimension? That's the first thought that comes to mind. Welcome, Sunflower Toast. If you're new here, I don't recognize the name, so it's always great to have new folks. Stephen Van Fossen, another new name I don't recognize. If you've been here before, I apologize. Walter, love your shows. Thanks for great content. Well, you're welcome. You clearly have been here before, so. Okay. Let's see what we got going here. We got plenty of time, folks. Only been an hour and 3 minutes. I got to get some water. It's been very hot here, and I sometimes forget to drink enough water on a hot day. So, again, I want to thank Nick for sending me the books. That it's just so cool to learn about something new, particularly when that something I learned clearly has a connection to something else I know about. Folks, I'm going to say it right here. I suspect, my personal suspicion is this bell jar phenomenon has to do with phenomenon related to the Nazi bell, for example, and the transtemporal, transspatial, transdimensional topic and technologies that Joseph Farrell and I and others, Sechery and others, have discussed. I think this bell jar phenomenon is directly related to that. Philip Blair, does Joshua Cutchin mention bells in Fey Travel Tech? Off the top of my head, I don't recall that he does. Nick N., I hope you saw they thought there were entities also seen to the right edge of the blue bell photo, supposedly. Yeah, I mentioned that. It's really hard to see them, and it's hard to show it on, the camera. But yeah, there were these little figures. Would they be the fairy folk? Would they be what people have called leprechauns over the years? Who knows? I don't want to use the L word too much, leprechauns, because then, some people are just going to say, oh, I dismiss this discussion because, there's something goofy. Some people might feel that way about Sasquatch being, claimed a connection to this phenomenon. Philip Blair asks, Philip Blair says, I'm wondering if Fey conveyance looks like a bell, like Tinkerbell. Oh, okay. We see. Interesting. So, anyway, I'm trying to think of, there was another little tidbit in here about the bell jar phenomenon that intrigued me. And I think I might have overlooked it when I was talking about it. Let's see. There's Antonio, the South American guy who had an abduction experience. That's really the best way to. I have to be honest with you. Abduction experiences, okay. We've heard a bunch of them over the decades. Maybe newbies haven't, but they don't really grab me. Kind of like Sasquatch. It's like, okay, unless I hear something new that has a context that jumps out at me. It's like, okay, you were abducted, you were poked and prodded and probed and this, that, and the other. Okay. It's one of those experiences that, that's a very personal experience, I think, ultimately. And what's being conveyed to you or what you get out of it is intended for you, the individual. And it may or may not do any good to share it with others. And when I say that, that gets misinterpreted as I'm trying to silence witnesses. We have too many knee-jerk, just way too high-intensity conspiracy fanatics, where when you get to the point, folks, where everything is a conspiracy, you need to back off of the energy drinks. You need to, maybe watch the cartoon channel a little bit, do something to relax. Have some chamomile tea, just go out and breathe the fresh air. There are conspiratorial, nefarious things that go on, but not every damn thing is a conspiracy. So when I say witnesses are under no obligation to share their experiences or stories with the public, because they're not. I'm not saying don't you dare do it or you shouldn't. I'm saying you don't have to if you don't want to. Don't let the enthusiasts push you onto the stage into a spotlight that you're not comfortable being in or that you don't want to be in. You don't owe it. No experiencer or witness to a strange phenomenon owes the public, okay, that cares about those things. Not one witness owes the public a damn word about their experience, okay? They should only do it if they want to, okay? But to be urged to do it, no. So that somebody who's gooning on the topic can live vicariously through your experience. Here's the thing. If they were to actually have had an experience like that, they might not be so quick to want to talk about it or relive it, okay? Because even the, experiences that you would call good, okay, or not particularly bad, the whole thing comes with a price and a burden that you pay, and you very often pay. It's a social price that you very often pay, okay? Because those who haven't experienced, they think those who have are crazy. Kenneth Johnston says, Tinkerbell had the dust that allowed Peter to travel. Nick is on it tonight. There you go. So, got a pretty good turnout tonight, folks. And folks, if you're new, I welcome you. Thank you for being here. Remember, folks, we do have super chats. That's another way to help us improve the channel and present interesting things to you in a very presentable package. So don't be shy with the super chats if you're inclined to want to do that. D. Dorothy Papineau says, Dalriada is the ancient kingdom, Scots-Irish ancient kingdom, North Ireland to the Hebrides. It's off topic. The Tuatha Dé Danann. It's not entirely off topic. I did mention the Tuatha Dé Danann, so you get to slide that one in, D. Dorothy. So we talk about all sorts of stuff here at the Walter Bosley channel. If you're new, I wanted to reiterate that, and you're welcome here to Sunflower Toast says, I had a great first live. Thank you. Well, Sunflower, I'm glad that you had a great experience, and I hope we definitely see you again. I'm not going anywhere yet. We still have several minutes. But I thank, all you who are here, the regulars and the newbies. It's great to have both. Now remember, before I forget, this weekend, let's see, today's the 12th, right? Yeah. On Saturday, I'm going to have Dr. Osmanagic talking about the Bosnian pyramids. Okay. So this should be really interesting. Dr. Osmanagic, talking about the Bosnian pyramids this coming Saturday. Don't miss that on the live. And now that we're back regularly after finishing Malia's move and getting ourselves situated, we're back here every week, twice a week, and maybe more here in the near future. So, Jackpot is asking what time on Saturday. I've got to look again because Dr. Osmagovich is in Europe. So I can't recall if it's the regular time or if it's earlier or later. But I will know that by tonight, and I'll put it in the community tab here at the channel. Philip Blair, Walter Bosley, Jeff McRockets. Who's Jeff McRockets? Soul Light US expat. Hey, haven't seen you in a while, or you've been quiet. Soul Light says there have been many cases of people being healed in those pyramids. Oh, the Bosnian pyramids. Okay, I've been to Bosnia several times on in my past job, my past career life, and never got to go see the pyramids. So, who's Jeff McRockets? Oh, Amazon is Jeff McRockets. Okay. Bezos, Mr. Penis Rocket. Yeah, exactly. So, folks, if you just happen to be logging in, we're almost done for the day for this particular episode. You'll be able to rewatch it because these are recorded. And, of course, you can go back to the beginning and watch the... What, Malia? Oh, mentioning the penis rocket? That's what it is. Tell me you have a tiny wiener without saying you have a tiny wiener. Right? Bezos. Okay. I'll open it up to general questions now for the remainder of the time. Nick N asks, what is your latest model coolness? Well, the stuff you sent me is the very latest, right? And that's going to be really cool. I'm wrapping up. I'm trying to get finished. I have primed. I have an F-22. I think I talked about this the other day. I have an F-22. I've got an aircraft carrier that I got to get back to working on. I got to finish Malia's Cutty Sark that I'm going to put in a bottle for her. I have Bride of Frankenstein that I've just barely started. I've got another little Henkel that, Nick, I think you sent me that one too. And it's constructed, and I've got like primer on it. But anyway, I think the first thing I'll attack that you sent me is the Ochronoplane, because that's really cool. So, and I'm 99.9% done with the Klingon Bird of Prey. Philip Blair asks, are you planning an expedition to that river in Montana? Eventually we will return to Montana sometime in the future for Lewis and Clark research and Glacier National Park related stuff. But believe me, it'll just be get in there, get out, because I'm not fond of Montana. It's one of the most beautiful states, one of the most beautiful places you'll see in the world. But that area up there where Glacier National Park is, let's just say we don't think alike. And narcissistic tomfoolery galore is tolerated and encouraged up in Northwest Montana. I'll put it that way. If you're an asshole and you're looking for a place to get away with your bullshit, Northwest Montana is your place. Yeah, Bezos has that kind of energy there, Joni said. But now that this bell jar thing, showed up as there in that area of Montana, that'll be on the list of weird things we look into. But yeah, particularly if you're like a kind of a religious cult-minded kind of asshole, you could really get away with your bullshit in Northwest Montana. There's plenty of that up there. False piety for money kind of scams. They know who they are. Most narcissists do. They just hate when you talk about them and you expose them. Nick N., any ideas for another Secret Missions installment? Oh, I know exactly what I want to do next. I'm just not announcing it yet because I really want to do some good scholarship and have it be a slam bang book. But yeah, I know exactly who my next subject is. And Malia, you don't tell anybody now. Don't let the cat out of the bag. So D. Dorothy Papano says Frank Zappa wanted to move there to be a tycoon. I don't know. For some reason, you mentioned that, and I thought of his song. Is it Freaks? It's the verse is, "I am a moron, and this is my wife. She's frosting a cake with a paper knife. All that you see here is American made. It's a little bit cheesy, but it's nicely displayed. We don't get upset when it crumbles and breaks. We just get on the phone and call up some flakes. It's flakes who come on over and wreck it some more. And we are so dumb they're lining up at our door. The plumber, he said yesterday afternoon. The plumber, he came yesterday afternoon. No, the toilet blew up yesterday afternoon. The plumber, he said, never flush a tampoon. This great information cost me half a week's pay, and the toilet blew up later on the next day." Yeah, I listened to Zappa quite a lot when I was a younger lad. I am a moron, and this is my wife. Flakes, that was it, not Freaks. I will not recite Bobby Brown. That's a little too graphic. Hey there, people. Philip Blair. Apparently, no one is missing 411 style. No one has missing 411 style disappeared with both a sidearm and a personal locator beacon. If that's bothering. Well, whatever it is that's messing with the people, I guess the fact that it has the beacon, maybe the beacon can transverse dimensions. There's an interesting idea. And, you got a sidearm, you got a fighting chance. And maybe whatever it is doesn't want to, deal with that. So the toilet went crazy. Yeah. Rusty Spoon with the pedantic corrections. Thank you, Rusty Spoon. No, that's okay because we all hate when people get the lyrics wrong, right? So thank you for pointing that out. Soulite US Expat. I'm starting to wonder if some cases the missing 411 are due to pterosaurs, as crazy as it sounds. I've heard of that. I've heard that before, though. So you're not the only crazy one out there. One gal who passed a lie detector test saw one in Washington, one with a 35-foot wingspan in the 1980s. Wow, that's cool. Rusty Spoon with Cosmic Debris is one of my favorite Zappa tunes. Yeah, that's I like Lucille too. The whole Joe's Garage album. Everything that's classic. But yeah. Doesn't Ted Nugent live in Montana? He might, and I think Kevin Costner, of course, has a ranch there. Susan Sarandon, I think, does. Yeah, there's Hollywood people go there, and it's just like when Hollywood people join the Church of Scientology. Their experience is different than the rest of the poor bastards that are, in Scientology. Same thing with Montana. You know that those rich Hollywood people, they are not having the same Montana experience that the average citizen is having. Even the ones that live right there in Northwest. Malia will tell you, I think Susan Sarandon had a spread there in that area, Flathead County or whatever. Okay, I guarantee you, she wouldn't have to put up with some of the same bullshit that goes on, like in the little town of Eureka. Okay, so it's, but isn't it that way anywhere? The rich and famous, they don't have the same experience as us regular folks, right? Nick N. Will NIMSACON posters be available for those that cannot attend, suitable for framing? Of course, I believe that Malia would say the answer to that is yes. She's working on the final graphic as we speak for the upcoming NIMSACON. So I think those posters would be absolutely available. Mental Floss Tycoon. Yeah, D. Dorothy, you're right. As Malia says, now Bob Bigelow has a ranch in Kalispell at the Montana Vortex. What is this? Nick N says, wow. So, okay, folks, we're getting down to the last few minutes. I want to thank everybody who's been here in the live chat, and particularly the new folks, and particularly you folks that have been around a while. Let's all thank Nick N for having the foresight to know that I would be interested in the bell jar phenomenon, and he sent me a couple of books on it. Thank you, Nick, for turning me on to this topic. I never heard of this, and now I'm fascinated. God damn it, Jesus, mother of effing. Yeah, I talk like a sailor sometimes. NIMSACON 2024 coming soon. Remember, second weekend of October in Sonora, California. Tickets are going to be available starting next month. And you have to attend. We're not streaming it. Sorry. Somebody last year shared a link that they shouldn't have shared, and let a lot of people, have access that shouldn't have. Whoever that person is, they know who they are. Shame on them. That was not a cool thing to do. We'll leave it at that. Remember, if you want to get Walter Bosley books, please go to walterbosley.com/shop. Malia and I slashed all the prices of all the Walter Bosley books significantly. Okay, they are much cheaper now, folks. But you have to go to walterbosley.com to get the cheapest price. Okay, it's still printed, quality printing by the same people. It's still going to ship to you by the same shipper, distributor. But go to walterbosley.com because it's the cheapest price, and I get my royalty. Okay, so please, walterbosley.com/shop. Tiki, I got to put him out of the room. I'm back in my place, and he just makes too much noise. But I'll bring him in, maybe this weekend. Philip Blair, the most cringe local news story I can ever remember seeing was a Spokane local TV news station swooning of Kim Kardashian shopping for her family in North Idaho. Yeah, So again, folks, I want to thank you. You new folks, please go check out the entire catalog of live streams I've already done in the past. You'll find them. Look at all the videos here at walterbosley.com. Check out the podcast playlist too, please. Check them all out. Go to walterbosley.com/shop for the books. And Malia and I will see you with Dr. Osmagovich this Saturday talking about the Bosnian pyramids. Again, thank you. And you guys have a good night, and we'll see you Saturday.